CTBTO. It is my great honor to welcome Dr. Lassina Zerbo, who is the Executive Secretary of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. He is a fantastic man. He is passionate about Africa. He is one of the global leaders when it comes to nuclear issues, and we are highly honored to have him today in Accra in this August ceremony to deliver a keynote address. And I believe it is an exceptional opportunity for all of us to really be open up and be frank. Ask your questions, make your comments. One other thing that I would like to highlight is when you want to make your comments, we encourage you, please kindly indicate your name, your organization, so if we have to follow up, then we will know who made that particular comment. The other issue is that if you want to make comments or ask a question, put up your name tag. Then we will take down your name and we'll call you in the order in which the name tags will restart. If you want to make an urgent intervention based on what someone has just said, please just put your two fingers and we will know this is urgent intervention relevant to the conversation that is ongoing, and we will give you the floor. So the discussion doesn't mean they are the only people speaking, but they are simply setting the stage for everyone to be able to come on board and to share their experiences and the views on that particular theme. The way the sessions are organized is in such a way that Isabel and myself will be rotating. The reason is that we didn't want to get experts and stock them up with the views to be facilitating sessions and not be able to express your views. So we took the burden so that we can allow you, the expert, the subject matter expert, to really express your views and intervene as often as possible. At this moment, I have the green light that the live stream is on, so I have the honor to welcome Dr. Lassina Zerbo, the Executive Secretary of the CTBTO, to give the keynote address. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Hubert, for hosting this fantastic workshop and inviting me to keynote this important event. Let me also express our gratitude to the Norwegian government and the Nuclear Threat Initiative for their generous support that makes this workshop possible. And of course, we have to say thanks to Ghana, the host country. And you have to know that Ghana is close to Burkina, and Ghanaian and Burkinabe are relatives, so I'm at home. So I've come to this workshop today for two particular reasons. First, this workshop is led by an African institute and addressed to the African nuclear community, as mentioned by Hubert just now. People were wondering, why do I come to, as some say, just a workshop? But it's not just a workshop, because I'm first of all African. And whatever concerns Africa concerns me. And coming to meet with the African nuclear community and nurture expertise to deal with important issues, as mentioned by Isabel, that NTI is taking care of for us, it's important, and that's why I am here. As more and more African countries express interest in enjoying the benefits of nuclear technology and its various civilian applications, let's all remember our duties and responsibilities as signatories of the Pelindaba Treaty. If I ask you who knows what is the Pelindaba Treaty, I'm sure there will be many, but there are few who will not know what is the Pelindaba Treaty. And it is important. We cannot talk about the NPT, we cannot talk about nuclear issues if we don't keep our ties with the Pelindaba Treaty, the treaty that makes Africa a nuclear weapon-free zone. But a nuclear weapon-free zone that would like to enjoy nuclear technology. And that's why we're here today. And let us make sure that investment in nuclear technology be made in line with our international obligation as responsible states. And the Pelindaba Treaty makes us a responsible state. So therefore, in my speech today, I want to focus on three broad questions. The first one is, where is the global nuclear community heading today? The second, what should we expect from NPT 2020? And the third, and what can African contribution to the NPT be? I offer these questions and this as reflection with the hope to stimulate a good discussion afterwards. First, where is the global nuclear community heading today? I guess you will assume that this is a $1 million question. And who knows this answer? Divergent priorities and major changes in nuclear norms and institutions are certainly making difficult any prediction. From my standpoint, three main trends are clear. The first one is a divide between the nuclear weapon states and the non-nuclear weapon states that is deepening but also widening. This means that traditional multilateral avenues for diplomatic exchanges, such as the NPT, and let me also ask the CTBT. I know it's not often mentioned, but when you talk about the nuclear weapon-free zone, the verification of the nuclear weapon-free zone goes through the CTBT. And the CTBT, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, is an important element of the overall NPT strategy. So, second, the proliferation of nuclear disarmament initiative is also fragmenting the unity among non-nuclear weapon states. I take as example ICAN, talking about the TPNW, the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, the Swedish initiative, and then the Creating Environment for Nuclear Disarmament and others. And third, rising animosity and competition among nuclear weapon states is leading to contestation of previously accepted norms of behavior. And you remember, some are saying now, and we have to reflect on this, arms control is not disarmament. Nuclear deterrence has to be rethought. So, what should we expect from the NPT 2020? Well, given the challenges I've underlined above, expectations have to be lowered and an urgent questions ought to be pondered. Given the context in which we are living in, what is realistically achievable and what is really desirable? For me, whether the Non-Proliferation Treaty Review Conference ends with a final communique or not has modest importance. Success at the NPT for me means three fundamental things. First, the importance and value that countries attribute to the CTBT in the NPT negotiation. And you won't blame me for that because I'm heading the CTBT. I have to make sure that we succeed in making this world a nuclear test-free world as we try to move for a nuclear weapon-free world. We cannot continue to fool ourselves. We need a common ground to restart from. We need some existing instrument on which we can rebuild trust and confidence in each other. One of these instruments exists and has been signed by 185 countries. Unless countries use the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty and its almost universal support as a bridge-building instrument among multiple nuclear communities, very little will be achieved I'm afraid. Second, the attitude of states in the actual negotiations. Are states negotiating from the center or from the margins? That's a question that we should ask ourselves. Are they attempting to compromise, or they approach each issue with their national interests only in mind? Third, the fresh contribution to negotiation by regional groups, Africa in particular, who have stood at the margin of this conversation far so long. We've been talking about this issue for long, but except this type of environment, how many of you have been in global discussions that deal with nuclear weapon and the threats? How many of you have been there? And this is why I can only thank young, dynamic individuals like Uber, and also the support that they're getting from government and the NTI to make sure we get Africans to be part of this important discussion. Nuclear weapons threat doesn't belong to the West only. It belongs to all of us. And we have to make sure, as responsible states, we be part of it. So, what can African countries' contribution be? We are experiencing a race to the heads and minds of African countries today. Major developed powers are launching and sustaining strategic dialogues with our African countries because of our economic and demographic prospects. In the nuclear energy business, too, Africa has become the new frontier for investment. According to the International Atomic Energy Agency, a third of almost 30 countries currently considering nuclear power in Africa. Egypt, Ghana, and let's not forget that Ghana hasn't started today. It started since President Nkrumah's time. Kenya, Morocco, Niger, Nigeria, and Sudan have already engaged with the IAEA to assess their readiness to embark on a nuclear program. Algeria, Tunisia, Uganda, and Zambia are also mulling the possibility of nuclear power. As many African leaders have remarked, Africa is hungry for energy, and nuclear power could be part of the answer for an increasing number of countries. This offers to our continent an extraordinary opportunity to work closely together to ensure that all of us can enjoy the benefit of nuclear energy while minimizing the risks that are associated to it. African countries cannot do this alone. Ghana will have to partner within the context of ECOWAS, and we can do the same in Central Africa and Southern Africa to make this a reality that satisfies us all. From safety to nuclear non-proliferation and nuclear security, any investment in nuclear technology requires strong cooperation with neighboring countries, a culture of transparency and accountability, and a willingness to work together to overcome technological and security issues. Nuclear investment in Africa can prompt strong nuclear Pan-Africanism. And what a best place to be when we talk about Pan-Africanism. Ghana has been championing this idea for so long. And I'm proud to say that through this nuclear technology issue, we can build an African nuclear Pan-Africanism too. Africa has, after all, an illustrious record. We are a proud regional nuclear weapon-free zone through the Pelindaba Treaty. Many of our countries support and abide by the Pelindaba Treaty, the cornerstone of our commitment to maintain Africa free of nuclear weapons. The establishment of ACONE, the African Commission for Nuclear Energy, stands to remind us of what we can achieve when we work together towards significant investment in technology and energy security. I see Collins, one of the board members of the AFCONE, who is here, but many of you underestimate the role that AFCON can play for Africa, but for the African Union as well. And that's something that could be part of your discussion because it is important. So, what should the Africa position be at the next NPT 2020? I allow myself to make 3 proposals. Let's get to the NPT 2020 with pledges for consideration and maybe ratification of treaties and instruments like the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. It is important to align the African community towards Pelindaba and the CTBT. CTBT, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, is part of the verification mechanism of the Pelindaba Treaty. And it is important that within Africa we take this seriously. We take this as a responsible state. If we are a nuclear weapon-free zone, we should raise our flag where necessary to make sure that we get other countries to follow our leadership in this issue. 2, let's submit an African paper that re-emphasizes our complete commitment towards the 3 goals of disarmament, non-proliferation, and access to nuclear energy. These are the pillars of the NPT and are inseparable. Finally, let's submit a proposal to boost Africa's commitment to nuclear education in order to become responsible nuclear countries. It is imperative for us all to invest in a thriving generation of nuclear scientists, but not only nuclear scientists, nuclear policy makers too. We have to improve our educational curriculum, our scientific training, and the opportunities for our young scientists to work and study abroad. These are some ideas, but many others can be put on the table. Let me stop here and let me open the floor for discussion or questions. And I look forward to hearing your views and work towards a strong Africa participation to the NPT 2020. What we've tried to do here is to bring young people to create this intergenerational dialogue, because those who have been in the negotiation of those treaties that we talk about are passing their time. And we have to get others to take the torch and then to move on. And then to make Africa the important place that it has always been, and the place that people look up to now for investment, for economic interest or economic growth. But as a responsible state, we shouldn't be to those discussions without knowing what we talk about and just follow what people do. We should go there with our need for nuclear technology, but at the same time with the responsibility that lies upon us to have made Africa a nuclear weapon-free zone. Thank you so much.
So in the remaining time, we would like to open the floor for comments, questions, and remarks. I would kindly like to start with, if you permit me, with Ambassador Alam to make remarks following the discussion by the Executive Secretary of the CTBTO. Ambassador Alam, you're welcome. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We are very happy. Thank you very much, and we are very happy to be here, and we are very honored to have you, sir, with us this morning for your opening statement. First of all, being, I work on international organization, I would kindly ask you to have your speech distributed to all of us. I think there are quite a few interesting points that we would like to take and to be part of whatever recommendations and submissions we are going to do. So please allow us to have that honor. You have raised a good number of important issues that I think we need to entertain in our deliberations here and in the deliberations that will take place in New York eventually towards the end of April. You have mentioned CTBTO with great interest. We are signatories of CTBTO, but we have not yet ratified for, I think, reasons that you do appreciate and understand. We have a situation in the Middle East with a neighboring country which is a nuclear power and is still in conflict with the area, and we cannot accept that a particular country, namely Israel, to have an upper hand and a nuclear power vis-a-vis the countries threatening, even as deterrents against the countries. The world is changing, as you rightly mentioned it, and it is very difficult for us. So, but this point put aside, I wish to put a proposal to you, sir. Next year, 2021, will be 25 years also of Pelindaba Treaty, the signature that started in Cairo in 1996. And I think that this should be, since you mentioned Pelindaba and the African adherence to that, I'm also putting the proposal to my colleagues here that in 2021, we put the proposal even to NPT that there should be some kind of a celebration of Pelindaba entering into implementation. And I think this is a good way to memorize and to remember what we Africans have been able to achieve during these 25 years. I think it is worth pondering about and worth working with. The three pillars of NPT are very important pillars, but is it enough now in the 2020 generation? Is it enough now for the future? You spoke about the intergenerational dialogue, and I think we have to give the opportunity to younger generations to be better nuclear scientists, to be better nuclear students, to be better. So we have a program that we started in 2018 to have some of our youth getting into this kind of program, because, as you rightly mentioned, Egypt is on the verge of having nuclear reactors for power and for water desalination because of the present situation. So there is a lot at stake with the African countries, and we are really looking forward to a very serious negotiation, a very serious cooperation, and a very serious approach to taking a strong, positive, substantial position as it comes to NPT, the REFCONF. We don't want to go through the same mistakes or the same hiccups where we went before. We want to be very strong and to prove that we can manage the future with that. And I think that CTBTO should be at the heart of that effort and promote the goals and targets that you are trying to promote in your organization. I thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit too long, but I thought it is worth mentioning. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think you've laid out the overall framework from your country's perspective, and also from the African perspective as well, and I appreciate this. Of course, as you rightly pointed out, I do understand how and why countries, depending on how they feel of their national security interests, will sign and then wait to
consider the ratification of the CTBT at a point in time where they feel comfortable, and then we have to respect that. And of course, you know, I often say I'm paid to promote the CTBT, but I'm also paid to put together the verification mechanism that leads to putting into place a nuclear test-free world. And we've put a fantastic verification mechanism in place with an international monitoring system, a verification regime that Egypt is rightly so enjoying. And we appreciate the cooperation and the flexibility that states are bringing to that account. Of course, regional issues are to be dealt not only regionally, but to link them up with the global context. And it's what keeps multilateral diplomacy alive. Isabel was mentioning the difficulty in multilateralism today. If we move away from seeing what is only the national interest to go to the regional, and you did it rightly by talking about the Pelindaba Treaty and to celebrate the 25th anniversary of its opening to signature, and I appreciate this. It's within the context of the Pelindaba Treaty that I want to link and connect the dots between Pelindaba Treaty and the CTBT as I seek its entry into force. When I talk about Africa being a responsible continent and African countries being responsible countries, I'm just saying we shouldn't only go and say we want nuclear energy and nuclear technology. I don't think that's fair. If we have the Pelindaba Treaty and then we have AFCONE, we have to find a way to get together so that as we move towards seeking those technologies, we do it as responsibly, but also as unified as possible. And this is one of the reasons why I came to this workshop and why I thank NTI, the Norwegian government, and also Uber for putting this workshop together. Because it's an opportunity to talk about all this openly. And as we say, in Africa, we solve all our issues in family, under a lovely baobab tree, and then try to find ways to move forward. And that's why it's important to not come and blame any country for not considering yet the ratification of the CTBT or the NPT or so forth, is to see how best we can get them prepared to be where we want them to be. And I think the Pelindaba Treaty can help us do that. My point is, we're not just here to ask. It's not because we want energy, but we want energy the right way. And that right way goes by the NPT, it goes by the CTBT, it goes by the Pelindaba Treaty. It also goes by the organizational framework that we created in Africa through AFCONE that we must all respect. If I ask here how many people know how AFCONE work, and I'm asking Colin to make sure he does this, there will certainly be few. But it is important that we know why the African Union has set up AFCONE and why in the first place we have put Africa in nuclear weapon-free zone through Pelindaba Treaty. It's been 10 years now, this year, since the Pelindaba Treaty has entered into force, and 25 since it was open for signature. And thank you for reminding, it will be 25 years in 2021 that the CTBT has been open for signature and not yet in force. But Pelindaba can help the CTBT to enter into force. And we shouldn't come to discussion and forget that responsibility that we have as a nuclear weapon-free zone. And that's what I wanted to mention, and thank you for your comment. There's another question there.
We have General Amadou who will make remarks. We have Mr. Collins Namalambo who will also make remarks. General Amadou, over to you.
Good morning, Mr. Zerbo.
Bonjour.
I am very happy to be here. I am the General Amadou Antagay coming from Senegal and the Manager General of the High Center of Defense and Security Studies in Accra. I would like first to have the permission, the authorization to speak in French, because it is more easy for me to speak French than to speak English. Je voudrais vous remercier pour cet excellent exposé. On nous avait parlé de vous déjà avant votre arrivée, donc ces quelques mots que nous avons entendus nous ont très bien rassurés. Rassurés, pourquoi? Parce que nous sommes aujourd'hui dans un continent qui est confronté à beaucoup de problèmes, surtout dans la zone où nous vivons, sahélo-saharienne, avec tout ce que vous savez depuis la situation qui a compliqué les choses avec la Libye. Ma question est que c'est très bien pour nous de parler de l'énergie nucléaire. L'Afrique en a besoin. Et pour ça, les mesures que vous avez demandées, à savoir prendre ça en compte dans l'éducation, dans la formation, et également former les hommes politiques est une chose excellente. Néanmoins, j'ai quelques craintes. Même si aujourd'hui, si l'Afrique voulait se lancer dans cette politique d'énergie nucléaire, il y aura forcément des bailleurs de fonds et des entreprises qui seront prêtes à venir l'aider. La question reste à savoir, avec ce qu'on a vu au Japon, avec la catastrophe de Fukushima, en Afrique, nous avons aujourd'hui des zones d'insécurité où l'État est totalement absent. Et connaissant aujourd'hui tous les risques qui entourent un peu la production d'énergie nucléaire, nous pensons qu'il est important, avant de penser à ça, de se focaliser sur les capacités de nos États à travailler pour une sécurisation, mais surtout pour la sécurité humaine des populations. Parce qu'il ne sert à rien de mettre des structures si les populations elles-mêmes n'ont pas la sécurité minimale qu'il faut. Merci, Monsieur le Professeur.
Général Gay, merci tout d'abord pour vos mots aimables, mais aussi pour la pertinence des points que vous avez évoqués. En fait, je crois que vous avez totalement raison. L'accès à l'énergie nucléaire va avec des conditions de sécurité, de garantie que les États doivent s'assurer qu'ils ont. Et pour ce que vous avez dit, effectivement, quand on voit le terrorisme rampant dans nos pays aujourd'hui, et quand vous parlez de Fukushima, ce que vous voulez dire, c'est le risque que l'Afrique peut avoir à avoir la technologie nucléaire, des centrales nucléaires, et qui sont à la merci du terrorisme et de l'insécurité que nous connaissons. Et c'est ça qui fait que vous dites qu'il faut d'abord s'assurer que les populations sont dans des conditions de sécurité qui les amènent à accepter de façon responsable et sécurisée la technologie nucléaire. Je suis entièrement d'accord avec vous. Ceci dit, je crois qu'il faut aussi prendre le contexte sécuritaire en lien avec la demande et les conditions économiques de l'Afrique aujourd'hui. L'Afrique va être plus peuplée que la Chine dans quelques années. Où trouvera-t-on l'énergie? Il faut que, en responsable pays africains, nous voyons que la nécessité de la sécurité, la nécessité de l'énergie et du développement va par la sécurité. Et donc, je vais dans votre sens, j'abonde dans ce sens pour dire qu'il faut s'assurer de la sécurité de l'Afrique et créer les conditions qui vont nous amener vers l'utilisation de la technologie de façon responsable, de façon disciplinée et de façon sécurisée. Mais voyez-vous, comment créer ces conditions sans l'implication de nos leaders? Et c'est pour ça, ce type de conférence qui est fait par Hubert et le NTI et le gouvernement de Norvège, nous devons venir avec un rapport qui va sensibiliser nos États et nos leaders sur la nécessité d'aller de façon disciplinée et responsable vers ces questions. Il ne suffit pas d'aller se trouver dans des réunions et dire nous avons besoin de l'énergie nucléaire. Il faut comprendre ce qui va avec la discipline, la sécurité, le sérieux au travail. Donc, on a besoin de tout ça pour avoir accès à l'énergie nucléaire et je suis entièrement d'accord avec ce que vous avez dit. Merci.
Mr. Collins Namalambo, over to you.
Thank you. Dr. Zerbo, thank you for your presentation. And I think you mentioned very key issues. One of those is the collaboration between AFCON and the CTBT. And from the CTBT side, we do value the cooperation that AFCON has with the CTBT, and we will look forward to work with you. Now, coming to the REFCON, there are, coming from Geneva, there's a lot of stumbling whether we go to have plan B. And I'm not sure what this plan B looks like. And Article 3 of the NPT mandates the review conference to ensure that the treaty is being implemented and that this was further elaborated and strengthened in the review process of 1995 and 2000. Now, given this mandate, it would be reasonable to expect that for a consensus document to come out of REFCON 2020. We also recall that there are past commitments that has never been fulfilled. Now, I'm not sure when we talk about Plan B, what it means. And if we don't come up with an outcome document, what could be other scenarios that one can look like? Is it a chair summary, factual summary? Would that be good enough? Or would one then expect to say, let's reaffirm the past commitments that has already been made? And therefore, for me, Plan B is sort of a possible idea. And those that are founding it basically will tell you that the security architecture of today is not conducive for us to be able to talk about nuclear disarmament. Let's focus on non-proliferation and peaceful uses, but because of the security environment which is so charged, let us even go there. So I just wanted to pick your brain whether this scenario of Plan B is really a plausible idea, or do we really have to focus, work towards an outcome document? And if we fail to get an outcome document, what are the possible scenarios that we can implement? Thank you.
Thank you, Collins. I guess Plan B or Plan C are often mentioned in the scientific background. If Plan A is what we put together under the NPT, so they mentioned it rightly, are we in this 21st century or this time of the global geopolitical context in sync with what the NPT states? That's a question that many are asking today. In order to build trust or to entertain trust is to show to the international community that the instrument that we put to place, that we are in phase with them, in sync with them. Why are you always talking about a nuclear test-free world, a nuclear weapon-free world possibility, while our weapon state? We have to try and make sure that one will give you nuclear technology and then that's fine. You have nuclear technology, you have this type of workshop. And that's why NTI is sponsoring. Let me take an image. Those who have sometimes, you're so concerned about the noise that is making, you want it, and forget about the discipline that General gave. You have to put those two together so that a country should take on board. But how do we solving or trying to solve? It's possible from the treaty. But the discipline that in reality never. I'm not here because people tell me why the executive secretary will come to this type of workshop. It's my role as well, after being executive secretary of the CTBT for so long, to make sure that part of our legacy is to have nurtured this type of dynamics in Africa for people to understand what are the roles and responsibility that goes with accessing nuclear technology, the responsibility that goes with the treaty that your leaders have signed. I visited a few years ago Ghana and the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission. I was so impressed to know that since Nkrumah time, he has sought to have this type of technology in Ghana. But why today we're not coming around Ghana to see how best Nkrumah has led this initiative and how we can accompany Ghana together within West Africa and have a replica of this in other regions in Africa responsibly. And that's what we have to do. And AFCONE can use the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission and what goes with it, their involvement in many issues, not only accessing nuclear technology, but also the responsibility that goes with Ghana's signature and ratification of the CTBT and many other treaties, and make sure this is taken on board within Africa as a whole. So, Collins, I'm putting you to task. To task here to get people to follow what you're here for as a diplomat in Geneva, but also as a responsible board member of AFCONE within the context of African Union. Thank you.
We have Commissioner Hamadi Rabio from here. Over to you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Rabio Ambali. I'm Commissioner of Police, working with the Nuclear Security Agency. Please think, I want to call my colleague from Senegal. I ask you to allow me to speak in French because it would be better to speak in French than in English. Merci, Dr. Zerbo, pour votre présentation quand même à travers laquelle vous avez touché du doigt les problèmes des pays africains. Et surtout, ce qui m'a beaucoup impressionné à travers votre discours, c'est surtout la question que vous avez évoquée du panafricanisme nucléaire. Parce qu'aujourd'hui, si le continent africain peut se réunir comme un seul homme, aller devant et défendre ses intérêts en matière nucléaire, ça peut être beaucoup plus bénéfique. Mais sauf que je suis sceptique. Aujourd'hui, quand on prend l'histoire du continent africain, et surtout on a ce dernier temps avec la géopolitique qui intervient, et qu'on connaît que chaque pays a des propres relations avec tel pays, comment on peut se réunir comme un seul homme et aller défendre un intérêt par rapport à cette question du nucléaire. Surtout que le domaine du nucléaire, c'est vraiment un domaine qui est spécifique. En tout cas, je suis un peu sceptique et à travers quel mécanisme on peut se réunir et aller devant pour défendre ses intérêts. Un deuxième commentaire que je voulais faire, c'est par rapport à l'aspect sécurité. Et mon collègue du Sénégal m'a précédé. Surtout, je voudrais évoquer une question aujourd'hui qui est d'actualité et qui pourrait peut-être être beaucoup plus d'actualité, la question de sécurité qui revient, surtout avec le contexte de la Libye aujourd'hui. Et surtout, moi, je ne parlerai pas des centrales nucléaires, mais aujourd'hui, quand on regarde dans le domaine de l'application de l'atome, c'est surtout l'utilisation des sources radioactives. Et aujourd'hui, le problème que vit l'Afrique, c'est surtout le cancer. Et l'utilisation aujourd'hui de l'application des sciences et techniques nucléaires à travers le traitement du cancer est en train d'être utilisée, et d'ailleurs c'est la meilleure voie pour traiter le cancer. Mais si on regarde le côté sécurité, parce que si plus on utilise des sources radioactives, de haute activité, et que l'aspect sécurité n'est pas beaucoup plus garanti. D'ailleurs, c'est des listes que nous avons sur le continent. C'est des personnes aujourd'hui qui sont en lien avec des terroristes d'État islamique, avec Daesh, et qui savent que c'est aussi facile de voler les sources radioactives et de l'utiliser comme engin improvisé nucléaire, ou engin improvisé radiologique. Donc là, il faut quand même que cette démarche s'inscrive dans les priorités, en tout cas du continent africain, pour qu'on puisse pouvoir prendre en charge cette question, la question de révision du TNP, parce que la question de sécurité, surtout sécuriser ce que nous avons comme source radioactive de catégorie 1, de catégorie 2, est beaucoup quand même important. Donc c'est ce commentaire que j'ai à passer. Merci.
Oui, et merci mon frère du Niger. En fait, vous avez entièrement raison. L'une des priorités aujourd'hui, c'est moins les centrales nucléaires, mais beaucoup plus l'accès à la médecine nucléaire, l'accès au traitement du cancer et l'utilisation des sources radioactives. Mais voyez-vous, l'utilisation des sources radioactives va aussi avec un canevas de discipline et de régulation que les États doivent suivre. Et on ne met pas un centre de traitement de cancer en radiothérapie si on n'a pas des règles qui justement cadrent en fait la présence même des sources radioactives dans les pays. Et le Niger est en train d'aller vers ça. Et le Ghana fait des traitements de radiothérapie depuis. Et c'est pour ça que j'ai parlé du Ghana Atomic Energy Commission, qui est un exemple qu'il faut voir, parce qu'ils ne font pas seulement dans la médecine nucléaire, ils font aussi dans l'agriculture. Et ça, c'est important. C'est pour ça que je demandais tout à l'heure à Hubert si vous aurez l'opportunité de visiter le Ghana Atomic Energy Commission. Moi, ça a été, je crois qu'il y a une dizaine d'années que j'ai visité ça. Et ça a été, comme on dit en anglais, an eye-opening. Because my visit to the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission 10 years ago has given me a better sense of what we're capable to achieve in Africa with little means. Ghana, they're not only doing with cancer therapy, as you mentioned, they do it with agriculture. The Pan-Africanism that basically, let's put it this way, started in Ghana. And if we have a Pan-Africanism in talking, in creating conditions to live together, we could have a Pan-Africanism in accessing nuclear technology and nuclear energy, making nuclear medicine, cancer therapy as wide as possible of use in Africa so that people can benefit from it. Niger is doing it, but I mean, let's face it, people travel 1,000 or 2,000 kilometers to have access to cancer therapy today. Is it reasonable when we know that the infrastructure is not there to get people to move from Burkina Faso, which is next door to Ghana, and then where will they stay, what condition they have? So we have to make sure all this is taken into account, and then that's what you mentioned. You mentioned that the priority is not nuclear energy, but it's the use of nuclear resources, because you talk about medicine, agriculture, and so forth. But they all go together. We have to start somewhere. If we start in Niger with nuclear medicine and cancer therapy and the use of the sources, when you have 60 million in Niger one day, you will certainly need energy. Your energy can come not only from Niger, but it could come from Ghana, or any means that West Africa will manage to put so that we can use nuclear energy responsibly to serve our population and serve our region in a way where we go to a growth that is sustainable. So I do share your point, but I do agree as well that we have to always start somewhere. And the starting point has to be as responsible as possible, engaging with government. You talk about how terrorists can access some of the nuclear sources. I mean, you are involved in security issue. We have to connect the dot in Africa and then think strategically, and that's important. Unless we put strategic thinking in what we do, we will not succeed. The only way to succeed is to think strategically and use the need of Ghana in the context of West Africa, the need of West Africa in the context of Africa, and the need of Africa in world context. Then we'll see that the path will be there for us to emerge responsibly and then to use nuclear energy and nuclear technology the best way possible. And this is why the cooperation with institutional non-governmental organizations like NTI is important. Because sometimes you'll wonder why NTI, an American institution, will come and invest in education in Africa, in West Africa here. It's because they want to connect the dots. They want the responsibility that the US has in the use of nuclear energy and nuclear technology to be the same, or to be like in Africa. They're helping, and then we have to appreciate this. But in the help as well, we have to also come with our responsibility to tell them and to tell everybody what is important for Africa that we're not seeing. And this is why I'm saying if we are a nuclear weapon-free zone, the responsibility that goes with being a nuclear weapon-free zone should also go with accessing nuclear technology and nuclear energy and getting other countries to be as responsible as us.
I want us to have one more question. We'll take just the last question, then we can go offline conversation. We have two more, so after that we'll have offline conversation. So I will call on Ms. Pei from Kenya, after that I will call on Ms. CNA from Botswana. Ms. Pei, over to you.
Okay, I'll be quick. My name is Pei Kaburu from Kenya Nuclear Regulatory Authority. And I just wanted to comment because my colleague here spoke about what is happening in Africa. But I really wanted to say something. What is the real cancer that is ravaging African countries? And it is because we do not have a system that is working. We get it and we get something like corruption. And to me, that is even a disease that is making us go backward than even the real disease itself. What am I saying? I say in African countries, maybe this region, you know, they have something we call the brain game. You know, you blame the senior government officer for 1, 2, 3 things, and you forget exactly where you are, what are you supposed to do. We have been told in many publications that you need to have regulations, policy, strategies, and all of them you find, you know, we can really come up with those documents very easily, but are they followed? That is another question that we really need to ask ourselves. I do believe even going to nuclear, because even Kenya we are going nuclear. It is something that is good. But if we get the context, are we ready for it? Are systems working? They could be there, but are they really working? And that if we change the mind and the way we think and the way we view things, I do believe we can be able to move from here to another place. But otherwise, we'll be still saying that we don't need to have this because we cannot manage it. And it is very true. Coming from a regulator, if you ask me, do we need a nuclear region? I'll have to ask you several questions for me to answer that question to you. So it is something that for this region that I would really emphasize is for us, not to have a premium and really eradicate the real cancer that is ravaging us. Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is why we have this type of fora to help us rethink our strategy, and that's why I mentioned strategic thinking. I won't go more in saying that this type of discussion will deal with what you say, because those who are here, without going into blame game, can go and make a difference in their respective countries and with people working with them. And I think this type of discussion is precisely for that, and that's what we have to encourage.
Thank you very much. My name is Lassina from Ghana, former Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Defense in Ghana. But I was not going to comment until Mr. Zerbo raised a very important issue of how do we build community of purpose, unity of purpose in Africa. Because I was just thinking that we do have quite a lot of opportunities that I think we should focus on and try to build that community, unity of purpose. One, we do have regional structures, as you mentioned. I know in my part of religion study, it has taken us a very long time to even have a conversation within the Secretariat about nuclear technology. My experience as I was engaged in the Secretariat was that nuclear technology is not an issue for Africa because we have committed to a nuclear free zone. Therefore, why would we have that conversation? Which I think is a very, very dangerous position. Because we are saying we don't have a problem. But in the meantime, even in SADC, you've mentioned Zambia, I know South Africa, I know Zimbabwe, and a lot of countries who want to pursue the use of nuclear energy. Particularly as we have some of the most rich uranium deposits in Africa. You mentioned all these other countries, I think one or two do not have that huge deposit of uranium, which is a source of nuclear material. Secondly, I don't know, Mr. Zerbo, how much you've been able to use the UPR process to track some of the deliverables that we have committed to. For example, the Pelindaba Treaty, which to me is a very, very key and fundamental commitment we have set ourselves to as Africa. We need to commit to it, especially as it has come into us. How many countries are committed to it? How many countries are making effort to report on this? So I don't know how we can find the opportunity within UPR to do that. Lastly, recently the Pan-African Parliament met in South Africa. I wonder how many of our legislators have an idea, even one small idea about nuclear security, nuclear technology, and the peaceful use of nuclear. So I think let's take advantage of these different structures to, first of all, achieve the proper mindset and discourse. And thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for your, valid point with regard to, I'll use the word again, the responsibility that African countries and African leaders have. You're talking about how many countries have followed through the implementation of the implementation of Pelindaba Treaty. I was calling Collins to task, okay? And I fully agree with you. There was a Pan-African, and then I went, Colin would know, they invited me once to the conference from State Party of the Pelindaba Treaty. Colin will tell you how shocked I was that they couldn't even get the quorum to start the meeting. And this is a conference of State Party of the Pelindaba Treaty that is in force within Africa. And that leads me to the point of our Kenyan sister, which is it's easy to blame, but we have to be responsible enough to put ourselves to task with regard to what we engage our government, our region, our continent into. We cannot engage and then get the Pelindaba Treaty in force if we not follow what the Pelindaba Treaty exactly says with regard to our responsibility as state party, but with regard also to our need for nuclear energy and nuclear technology. Some will go and then discuss the need for nuclear energy and nuclear technology without even remembering what is within the Pelindaba Treaty and the African Commission on Nuclear Energy and how this could be done responsibly. We go in negotiation with countries, we go in negotiation with institutions that don't know what is AFCONE, institutions that don't know what is the context of the African Union and then how we work. But we go because when we go, we talk about our country, one country. We don't see that country in the context of the region and that country in the context of Africa. And when we talk Pan-Africanism, it shouldn't just be a word. It should be when Burkina Faso goes to talk about accessing nuclear technology, they have to take experience from Ghana and talk to the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission and talk to the Niger Atomic Energy Commission. Because if you look at the setup in West Africa, those commissions are dealing with all entities from the treaties to the implementation of the treaty and the use and access to nuclear technology. But how many countries are doing this in Africa? In many of our African countries, it's separate institution. People are working, it could be defense, it could be security, it could be university, it could be agriculture, and then you never know exactly how Pelindaba could be implemented and how people can work together. I think let's be humble enough to follow what is working in other countries. And I can tell you, what I've seen in Ghana and what I've seen recently in Niger are examples that we can follow in West Africa. And that's something that we should do. And you all should take the opportunity when you visit those countries to see what they're doing, because you're getting in that field and expertise of nuclear technology. And it's important that you know what those countries are doing. Because when you go, for instance, in Botswana to talk about this issue somewhere, you have the element to make your case. And that's what is important. Thank you.
We would like to have one last person, Professor Zan from Benin, to make a comment.
Moi, c'est Martial Tiburzanou. Je suis professeur des universités, expert en droit nucléaire, en sécurité nucléaire, en sûreté nucléaire, point focal AIEA et NNSP. Je remercie le secrétaire exécutif pour sa brillante présentation et je voudrais formuler deux requêtes et poser une question. La représentante de l'Égypte vous a demandé très gentiment votre discours. Je réitère la même requête et je souhaiterais que vous nous le mettiez à disposition. Cela peut être un fil conducteur pertinent. Deuxièmement, l'agenda est très chargé et je ne suis pas sûr, à moins d'un miracle, que nous allions visiter cette commission dont vous avez parlé en des termes élogieux. Je suggère que M. Foch puisse nous faire ici en salle une présentation synthétisée en quelques minutes de ce que fait la Commission. Cela pourrait être déjà un indicateur pertinent à défaut de le visiter. Troisième chose, dans votre intervention, vous aviez parlé de l'exemple à suivre. Vous allez partir bientôt en raison de votre agenda très chargé, si je m'en tiens à ce qui a été dit. À l'issue de ces travaux, qu'est-ce que vous attendrez concrètement des experts que nous sommes pour impulser cette dynamique et ce souffle que vous avez exposé dans votre présentation? Je vous en remercie.
Merci, notre cher frère professeur du Bénin. Et je veux passer par le dernier point que vous avez évoqué. Et qu'est-ce que j'attends? Ce serait prétentieux. C'est qu'est-ce que nous attendons? And Isabel is asking, what am I expecting from this conference as we go forward? I say it's not what I expect, it's what we all should expect as African here in this context. I've given some thoughts on where I think, based on my experience in this field for the past 16 years, what can be done and what Africa and how Africa can position itself with regard to the NPT by making sure we go along in taking into account all the points that were mentioned. Discipline, security, safety, safeguard, and all that go with the use of nuclear resources and nuclear energy. I did mention following some great example. I used the example of the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission and the Commission of L'Énergie Atomique of Niger, because I've seen that those are structures where people take into account all aspects from treaty to its implementation and its use. And we've got to do that over the rest of Africa. It could be done in Ghana in the context of ECOWAS, in Ghana and Niger in the context of ECOWAS, in Central Africa, in SADC. But we have to be able to be humble enough to follow examples that are good for us that we saw in other countries. And we have to respect that. The reason why I talk about the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission, I mean, trust me, I'm not working in publicity or advert. I don't have a company that do advert for the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission. It's just that I visited and I wanted to share what I saw that I think can be useful to us all here. Your point in asking Hubert to talk about, make a brief presentation on the Ghana Atomic Energy Commission is a valid point. I think Hubert, if you go into what they do or have somebody from the Commission to come and be in one of the discussion, that will be helpful. And you ask for my speech. Of course, we'll make it available with some few editing that I've made recently to make sure we take into account what diplomat subtlety is all about. So when that is done, I think the speech will be available to you. And then, so I'm sure my brother understands that being a scientist and being lost among diplomats is not an easy thing.
So I would like to kindly thank Dr. Zerbo on the excellent discussion laying the stage. This morning, please, ladies and gentlemen, let's give an applause.